And I was essentially made into one of the highest ranking American leaders. And essentially I was promoted because I did exactly what I was told. I was like, I really believed it was God. God was speaking through Moon. He was more than a prophet. He was the Messiah. He was sinless, had a second wife, had children out of wedlock, but those are rumors. Don't think those negative thoughts. And at one leadership meeting, Moon said to a number of us, when we take over the world, you should think what country you want to run. And I was thinking Australia would be good. I could have my own continent. and it's funny now that I'm literally Zig Heil. I mean, that was when I saw the planes being flown into the World Trade Centers, I thought I would have done that. That's how far gone I was. And people say, well, how'd you get out if you were that fanatical, if you were that high up? The truth is I fell asleep at the wheel of a van driving 80 miles an hour into the back of a tractor trailer truck, broke my leg, needed 2 operations, and while I was in the hospital, I had a lot of time to sleep, which I didn't have in the group. I was sleeping an average of 3 to 4 hours a night, working 7 days a week. And I missed my sister, Thea, who was the only person in my life, literally my friends, my family, who didn't attack my involvement with the Moonies. She was the only one who just said, I love you, I don't understand, I miss you. So I called her and she said, oh, you have a nephew, you have a net, come home, I'll take care of you. I said, if you promise not to tell the parents, and if you promise not to tell Steph, my eldest sister, I'll arrange it, because I was a leader, I could arrange things like that. And thank God she broke her promise, told my parents, and they literally did a deprogramming intervention with me. And in my case, they didn't need to kidnap me. My father arrived, took my crutches away, and put them on his cast from here to here. And they said, we want to talk to you about your involvement with the Unification Church. And I was a fanatic. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on my personal story, but I really want you to understand that I've been in the world. I've been in the mindset of having a radical personality change, of having all of my beliefs shifted 180 degrees from the point of being a Jew who believes in free will and who is horrified by the Holocaust to believing that I have to be a heavenly soldier for God and a slave to God, and that the Holocaust was justified because the Jews didn't accept Jesus. I mean, just to give you an example of how extreme the beliefs changed in me. And I've heard a number of ex-members saying comments like, boy, was I stupid being in the group or whatever. And I'm here to testify to and to tell you as a mental health professional that, the fish want to come back. I love fish. I scuba dive. I don't know if anyone else does. Lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Anybody? Not stupid. I'm telling you, I've met thousands of people who've been in mind control experiences, and I would say on the average their IQ is 130 or higher. It's not an issue of intelligence. It's an issue that we're human beings. And part of what I needed to do during my intervention, I won't get into it, I described some of it in my first book. But at the point that former members were telling me about Chinese communist brainwashing techniques, I was curious. It wasn't attacking Father. It wasn't attacking the divine principle, which is the doctrine. You have the Book of Mormon, we have the divine principle, black book, this thing. And in the Moon theology, the commies were Satan's army. So sure, I'd be interested in what the Chinese communists did for brainwashing. And so they started telling me about Robert J. Lifton, who was an Air Force psychiatrist who had been commissioned in the 1950s by military intelligence to go to Hong Kong and start interviewing people who had come out of Maoist thought reform programs and tell the military what the heck is brainwashing. And he wrote a book called Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, in which he outlined 8 criteria that any environment may be judged as a brainwashing, or he preferred the term thought reform environment. And as we were going through every one of the 8 criteria, as much as I didn't want to say it verbally, I was like, we do that, we do that, we do that, we do that. And I assure you that one organization does all of you too. And I was left with an intellectual quandary of, wait a minute, Satan's army does brainwashing, God's army does brainwashing? How does this work? I mean, and God is absolute, eternal, and unchanging. That's the Mooney doctrine. And if God didn't interfere with Adam and Eve in the fall, then how come God is changing and now interfering and making people do the right thing? And by the way, the presentation by Ken on deception, brilliant. It could have been exactly about the Moonies. I have quotes called Master Speaks, the internal speeches, where Moon says, God tells lies very often. Or it's not a lie if you're doing it to help somebody. And of course, helping somebody is defined as getting them into the group. And making them give up all their money, making them marry people who are strangers, who they can't even speak the same language, having every single aspect of their life controlled. So for me, it was like beginning of the house of cards falling down. But for me, it was in the space of 5 days of attack. It was 4 people just telling me negative stuff, negative stuff, negative stuff, negative stuff, and me just going, no, 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 no. But I was still listening. And the bottom line is, I'm a good person. I grew up to be a good person. I'm an honest person. I'm an idealistic person. And there's no way in the world that I would have ever chosen to get involved with a group that lies and manipulates and controls people's minds and breaks up families, wants to institute a totalistic theology and enslave everyone else in the world, where the leaders live a totally luxurious life while members sleep on cold wooden floors and have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And by the 5th day, I had an epiphany. Some of the ex-members were talking about epiphanies. My epiphany was when the ex-members were reading one of Moon's speeches to congressmen and senators. And the quote was basically, there's a controversy that me, Reverend Moon, is brainwashing American youth. Is that possible? Can me, Reverend Moon, a Korean, brainwash an American? I know your answer is no. My answer is no, too. No American is so foolish, and I respect Americans very much. And I was listening, and the ex-members just read it. It was his own words. Said, what do you think, Steve? And I said, what a snake in my head. What a liar. I had heard him hundreds of times talk about how stupid Americans were, how pathetic Americans were, because the Koreans were the master race. They were the Adam country. We, Americans, were the Archangel country designated to serve Adam and Eve. That's all we were good for, to help get money. This is starting to bother me. So, I love fish.
It's relaxing.
It's relaxing and soothing. Good. Very briefly, so there I was a top leader in a multi-billion-dollar group. And by the way, I have a list of front groups of the Moonies on my website, freedomofmind.com. Last time I checked, it was 50 pages long, single-spaced. Lest you think that the Moonies are a non-entity or something, they own the Washington Times newspaper, a newspaper that's never made a penny in 25 years, and over $2 billion is estimated to have been spent. They own the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. They own the broadcast facilities that every major network uses for TV in Washington, D.C. They own a gun factory in Worcester, Massachusetts. They own the largest fish processing plant in Kodiak, Alaska. And they really do want to still take over the world.